The War Council laughed when the humans arrived with a single bodyguard. They stopped laughing 3 minutes later when 75 soldiers were on the floor. So there I was, Ambassador Quillax of the Vorthene Collective, standing in the observation deck of Helix 7 station, watching ships arrive for what I was absolutely certain would be the biggest waste of time in my 30-year diplomatic career. 3 species. 3 incredibly stubborn, proud, war-hungry species, all crammed into one neutral space station expected to somehow resolve a conflict that had been raging for 2 decades. The odds of success, I would have bet my secondary liver that we had better chances of teaching a Krellian sandworm to perform opera. The Cathan Dominion had sent their most aggressive war council, naturally, because nothing says we want peace quite like sending the people who have personally vaporized 17 colonies, the Selvix Empire. Oh, they brought their honor guard, 12 feet tall, covered in ceremonial blades and with enough pride to choke a star. Fantastic choice for a peaceful negotiation. And my own people, the Vorthene Collective, well, we had sent me, which honestly was not much better. I specialized in trade disputes, not preventing genocidal warfare. But here is where it gets truly laughable. The humans had insisted, absolutely insisted on being part of the mediation process. Humans, those tiny, fragile, barely spacefaring creatures who had only achieved faster-than-light travel 40 years ago, the galactic equivalent of children who had just learned to walk, now demanding a seat at the adult table. The Galactic Council, in their infinite wisdom or perhaps infinite stupidity, had agreed, something about fresh perspectives and neutral parties. I had nearly laughed my throat sacs inside out when I heard the news. My aide Perlixon had briefed me that morning while I ingested my nutrient paste. Ambassador, the human delegation will consist of 1 diplomat and 1 security personnel. 1? I had asked, barely containing my amusement. 1 bodyguard for a summit with 3 species who have been trying to exterminate each other? That is what their message stated, sir. I had shaken my head, my sensory tendrils quivering with suppressed laughter. Humans. Adorable, really. Like watching infant creatures play at being dangerous. The Cathan had brought 40 guards. 40. The Selvix had their entire honor battalion, 20 strong. Even I had a security detail of 15 trained Vorthene soldiers, each one capable of crushing a human skull with their bare appendages. And the humans? 1 bodyguard. The other ambassadors and I had shared a private communication channel the night before. We had all agreed on one thing. Humans were not to be taken seriously. This summit would fail as all the others had failed, and then we would go back to our respective governments and explain once again that peace was impossible. The war would continue. Billions would die. And the humans would scurry back to their little corner of the galaxy, hopefully having learned not to involve themselves in matters beyond their comprehension. I checked my chronometer. The human ship was scheduled to arrive in 20 minutes. The station commander had assigned them a standard diplomatic berth, nothing fancy. The Cathan had demanded the largest docking bay. The Selvix had required a ceremonial entrance hall. My people had claimed the entire eastern wing. The humans? They had not requested anything special. No demands. No requirements, no complaints, which should have been my first warning sign, honestly. But I was too busy rehearsing my opening statements and calculating how quickly I could leave once this disaster of a summit collapsed. I had reservations at the finest restaurant on Vorthene Prime in 3 days, and I absolutely refused to miss them because of some pointless diplomatic theater. The communication panel chimed. Human vessel approaching, sir. I straightened my formal robes and prepared my best diplomatic smile. Time to humor the children. The human ship was, how do I put this diplomatically, underwhelming. A mid-sized transport vessel. Nothing fancy. No weapons visible. No intimidating hull design. It looked like something you would use to move cargo between mining stations, not transport a diplomatic envoy to the most important peace summit in 2 decades. The airlock hissed open, and out stepped Ambassador Rebecca Frost. She was short. I mean, I knew humans were small compared to most galactic species, but seeing one in person really drove the point home. Maybe 5.5 feet tall. Her skin was pale. Her hair was tied back in some sort of functional knot, and she wore a simple dark suit. No ceremonial armor, no status symbols, no visible augmentations. She looked like an accountant. Behind her came the bodyguard, and I actually had to stop myself from laughing out loud. His name, I later learned, was Tommy Chen. He was maybe 6 feet tall, which I suppose was tall for a human but utterly average by galactic standards. He wore casual clothes, actual casual clothes, a jacket, comfortable pants, and what appeared to be athletic shoes. His hair was messy like he had just woken up from a nap. He had a small bag slung over one shoulder, and he was eating something. Chewing right there in the diplomatic receiving area, like he was taking a stroll through a market instead of attending the most critical peace negotiation in recent history. Ambassador Quilnax. Rebecca extended her hand, that bizarre human greeting gesture. I touched her hand briefly, trying not to think about how fragile it felt. Ambassador Frost. Welcome to Helix 7. I trust your journey was comfortable, long but uneventful, she replied with a smile. This is Tommy Chen, my security specialist. Tommy nodded at me, still chewing whatever snack he had brought. Hey, he said. Just hey. Not greetings, not honored to meet you. Just hey. I managed to maintain my diplomatic composure. Your, security detail is quite minimal. Tommy is all we need, Rebecca said with absolute confidence. From across the reception hall, I heard the unmistakable sound of Cathan laughter. Their War Council commander, Drexith, had apparently noticed the human delegation. His 4 eyes gleamed with predatory amusement. The humans brought a snack eater as protection, Drexith announced loudly. His guards joined in the laughter, their chitinous bodies clicking with mirth. The Selvix war chief Corvin turned his massive horned head to observe Tommy. His lipless mouth curved into what might have been a smile. How quaint. Does it perform tricks as well? Tommy, to his credit, or perhaps his stupidity, did not react at all. He simply pulled out another snack from his bag, something crunchy, and continued eating while examining the architecture of the station with mild interest. Rebecca maintained her diplomatic smile, but I noticed something in her eyes. Not anger, not embarrassment, something else. Amusement, pity, I could not quite identify it. Shall we proceed to the conference chamber? I suggested, eager to move past this awkward introduction. As we walked through the station corridors, I noticed something odd. Tommy did not walk like a bodyguard. He did not scan for threats, did not maintain a protective formation around Rebecca, did not even seem particularly alert. He just wandered along, looking at things, sometimes stopping to examine a viewport or a piece of station equipment. At one point he actually fell behind because he was watching a maintenance drone repair a wall panel. Is your security specialist qualified? I asked Rebecca quietly. She glanced back at Tommy, who was now catching up while drinking something from a container. Tommy? Oh yes, very qualified. He seems rather relaxed. That is just Tommy, she said with a knowing smile. He takes his job seriously when it matters. I did not find that reassuring. Not even slightly. The other delegations clearly agreed with me. As we entered the main conference chamber, I heard whispers and suppressed laughter from all sides. The human bodyguard had become the joke of the summit before negotiations had even begun. That should have been my second warning sign. The conference chamber was designed to intimidate. High ceilings, reinforced walls, a massive circular table with position markers for each delegation. Holographic displays showed the disputed territories, casualty counts, fleet position. Everything was calculated to remind everyone just how much was at stake. The Kinthan delegation sat to the north, 40 guards standing behind Drexith like a wall of armored death. The Selvix occupied the east, their honor guard arranged in ceremonial formation, each one carrying enough weapons to conquer a small moon. My Vorthan delegation claimed the west, our 15 soldiers maintaining professional alertness, and the humans. They took the south position. Rebecca sat at the table. Tommy pulled up a chair slightly behind her, slouched into it, and proceeded to look like he was fighting off sleep. Let us begin, announced the station's neutral arbiter, a floating AI construct. This summit has been called to address the ongoing conflict between the Cathan Dominion, the Selvix Empire, and the Vorthine Collective. 2 decades of war, trillions of credits wasted, billions of lives lost. It ends today, one way or another. It ends with Cathan victory, Drexith declared immediately. We have the strongest fleet, the most advanced weapons. Surrender now and we may show mercy. Corvin slammed his massive fist on the table, cracking the reinforced surface. Selvix honor cannot accept defeat from creatures who fight without courage. We will die before we kneel. I activated my translator and spoke calmly. The Vorthine Collective has no intention of surrendering to either of your barbaric civilizations. Perhaps if you both developed actual culture instead of just weapons, we would not be in this situation. Yes, I was being provocative, but honestly, after 20 years of this nonsense, I was tired of pretending to be nice. Rebecca raised her hand politely. Perhaps we could start by identifying common ground. Surely there are trade benefits to peace, cultural exchanges, scientific cooperation that could benefit all parties. The chamber went silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then everyone started laughing. Drexith's mandibles clicked with amusement. The human thinks we care about trade. How precious. We are warriors, Corvin rumbled. Not merchants. We resolve disputes with strength, not words. I found myself nodding in agreement. Ambassador Frost, with all due respect, you clearly do not understand the depth of hatred between our species. This is not a trade dispute. This is a matter of pride, honor, territory, and 20 years of accumulated grievances. Rebecca looked disappointed but not surprised. I see. So you prefer war. We prefer victory, Drexith said coldly. As do we, Corvin added. War is simply the continuation of politics by other means, I quoted an old Vorthene philosopher. And currently war is winning. Tommy shifted in his chair, reaching into his bag for another snack. He pulled out what looked like some sort of wrapped bar and examined it with great interest, as if the nutrition label was more fascinating than the impending collapse of peace negotiations. Rebecca tried again. Surely your populations are tired of war. The economic strain alone must be crippling all 3 of your civilizations. Our people are bred for combat, Drexith said dismissively. They know nothing else. The Selviks embrace hardship, Corvorn declared. It strengthens us. The Vorthene collective has resources sufficient for another century of warfare if necessary, I added. Which was a complete lie, but diplomacy is mostly lying anyway. The Arbiter, AI flickered. This is unproductive. I must remind all parties that this station is a neutral zone. Violence is absolutely prohibited under galactic law. Of course, Drexith said with a smile that showed far too many teeth. We are all civilized beings here, but I noticed his guards shifting positions slightly. Subtle movements, professional preparations. The Selvik's honor guard were doing the same thing. Hands moving closer to weapons, stances changing. This was going to get violent. Everyone knew it. The question was just when. The final pretense of civility lasted approximately 6 more minutes. Drexith decided to rehash an old incident. The Selvik's attack on Catham Colony 7 was a war crime. Your so-called honor guard slaughtered civilians. Corvin's eyes blazed. Those were military contractors, legitimate targets. Unlike the Catan biological weapon deployed on our agricultural world, that was never proven, Drexith shot back. Because you destroyed all the evidence, I interjected. Mostly because I was bored. Both of you committed atrocities. Let us not pretend otherwise. The Vorthene collective has documented evidence of your crimes. The Vorthene are spies and cowards, Corvin snarled. You hide behind technology while real warriors fight. We simply have evolved beyond your primitive obsession with physical combat, I retorted. That was, in retrospect, not my wisest statement. Drexith stood up. His guards immediately went on alert. Primitive. You call the Cathan Dominion primitive? Corvin stood as well, his 12-foot frame towering over the table. Finally something the insect and I agree on. The Vorthene disrespect us both. Oh please, I said, standing because I refused to be the only one sitting. You were both fighting with clubs and rocks when my ancestors were building starships. The station's security systems activated. Red lights. Warning klaxons. The Arbiter AI's voice boomed through speakers. All parties stand down immediately. Violence is prohibited. This is your only warning. Drexith reached over to his control panel and casually disabled the security protocols for his section. I am invoking diplomatic immunity. My actions are sanctioned by Cathan law. Corvin did the same. Selvik's honor demands satisfaction. The insults must be answered. I hesitated, but then I saw my guards looking at me expectantly. Pride is a terrible thing. I disabled our security protocols as well. The Vorthene collective will not be intimidated. Rebecca stood up calmly. Gentlemen, please. This is exactly what we are trying to avoid. Violence solves nothing. Violence solves everything, Drexith said coldly. He drew a plasma blade from his armor. His 40 guards drew their weapons simultaneously. Corvin pulled 2 massive war axes from his back. His 20 honor guards armed themselves with various implements of destruction. My 15 soldiers raised their energy rifles. The chamber was suddenly filled with enough weaponry to level a city block. Rebecca's voice remained steady. Last chance. Everyone put down your weapons and return to the table. Drexith laughed. Or what? Your little snack eater will stop us? All eyes turned to Tommy, who was halfway through eating his nutrition bar. He looked up, noticed everyone staring at him and chewed thoughtfully before swallowing. You really should sit down, he said to Drexith. His voice was casual, almost friendly. Drexith laughed harder. A human threatens me. I have killed creatures 10 times your size. Tommy shrugged. Okay. Your funeral. That was when Drexith lunged forward, plasma blade aimed directly at Rebecca's throat. It was a killing strike. Fast, professional, designed to decapitate the negotiations. Literally. Tommy moved. And that, my friends, is when everything changed. I have witnessed many things in my 30-year career. Diplomatic triumphs, political betrayals, even a few assassinations. But I had never seen anything like what Tommy Chen did in the next 180 seconds. Drexith's blade was perhaps 6 inches from Rebecca's neck when Tommy somehow crossed 12 feet of space in less time than it takes to process thought. One moment he was sitting in his chair, the next he was simply there, his hand clamping down on Drexith's wrist. The Cathan commander outweighed Tommy by at least 200 pounds. Cathan bone structure is reinforced with metallic compounds. Their strength is legendary. Tommy twisted Drexith's arm. Something cracked. The plasma blade clattered to the floor. Then Tommy did something I still cannot fully explain. He used Drexith's own momentum to flip the massive warrior over his shoulder and slam him into the reinforced table with enough force to crack the surface. The Cathan commander, veteran of 1,000 battles, lay there stunned and gasping. Time elapsed 4 seconds. The Cathan guards reacted. Finally, their training overriding their shock. 40 soldiers, armed with advanced weaponry, professional killers all, converged on Tommy's position. Tommy moved through them like water through a net. A rifle swung at his head. He ducked under it, drove his elbow into the guard's thorax with surgical precision, and the soldier dropped. Another guard fired an energy weapon. Tommy was not where the shot went. He was somehow behind the shooter, delivering a strike to the nerve cluster at the base of the neck. The guard collapsed. He used their numbers against them. In the confined space around the table, 40 guards became a liability, not an asset. They blocked each other's shots, collided with each other, created their own chaos. Tommy exploited every mistake. A guard overextended. Tommy grabbed the arm and used it to throw the guard into 2 others. A cluster of guards tried to surround him. Tommy vaulted over the table, grabbed a fallen weapon and threw it with enough force to knock 3 guards unconscious when it bounced between their heads like a demented pinball. He did not kill anyone. That was what made it so terrifying. Every strike was calculated for maximum incapacitation with minimum permanent damage. He was not trying to murder them. He was trying to put them to sleep, quickly and efficiently. Time elapsed 45 seconds. 20 Cathan guards unconscious or immobilized. The Selvic's honor guard decided to join in, because apparently seeing a single human dismantle the Cathan warriors made them think they should also try their luck. Corvin himself charged forward with his war axes. The Selvic's war chief, trained since birth in combat enhanced with biological augmentations, wielding weapons that weighed more than Tommy's entire body. Tommy picked up a chair. He threw it at Corvin's face. While the war chief was reflexively swatting it aside, Tommy closed the distance, dropped low, and struck both of Corvin's knees with precise kicks that somehow bypassed all that muscle and armor. The 12-foot giant toppled like a falling tree. The honor guard rushed in. 20 warriors, each one carrying ceremonial blades that were also very functional blades. Tommy grabbed one of the fallen Cathan plasma rifles. He did not fire it, he used it as a club. The rifle became a blur, striking here, blocking there, smashing into vulnerable points with mathematical precision. The Selvic's warrior swung a massive sword at Tommy's head. Tommy leaned back just far enough for the blade to miss by millimeters, then stepped in and delivered a palm strike to the warrior's solar plexus. The warrior folded like paper. 2 guards tried to grab Tommy from behind. He dropped his weight, slipped out of their grasp, and somehow ended up behind both of them. 2 quick strikes, and they were on the ground. He moved like violence itself had taken physical form, and decided to be efficient about it. No wasted motion, no showboating, just pure, calculated, devastating effectiveness. Time elapsed, 1 minute 30 seconds. All Cathan guards down. 15 Selvic's honor guards incapacitated. My Vorsian soldiers, to their credit, or perhaps their stupidity, decided they should probably intervene. 15 rifles aimed at Tommy simultaneously. "Stand down," I ordered, my voice embarrassingly high-pitched. They did not listen. Military pride, professional duty, idiocy. Choose your explanation.
They fired.
15 energy bolts converged on Tommy's position. He was not there. I cannot explain how he moved that fast. Human physiology should not allow for that kind of speed. He rolled under the table, came up behind my guards, and proceeded to demonstrate that Vorthian combat training was apparently worth absolutely nothing. He struck pressure points I did not even know we had. My guards dropped like their strings had been cut. One soldier tried to fight hand to hand. Tommy caught his punch, twisted, and suddenly my best close combat specialist was face down on the floor with his arm at an angle that made my sensory tendrils hurt just looking at it. Time elapsed, 2 minutes 15 seconds. All guards from all 3 species were down. The chamber was silent except for groaning and the sound of Tommy cracking his neck, stretching like he had just finished a light workout. He walked back to his chair, sat down, pulled out his snack bag and resumed eating. Total time elapsed, 2 minutes 47 seconds. Call it 3 minutes for simplicity. Rebecca had not moved from her position throughout the entire engagement. She straightened her suit jacket and looked around the room. Now then, she said pleasantly, shall we try this again? Nobody spoke for a very long time. Drexith was still on the table, conscious but clearly reconsidering his life choices. Korvan was being helped into a sitting position by 2 of his guards who had regained consciousness. My own head of security was holding his arm and staring at Tommy with an expression of pure existential horror. The Arbiter AI, which had been silent during the entire engagement, finally spoke. That was unprecedented. Rebecca smiled. Tommy takes his job seriously. I was promised nobody would get hurt, the Arbiter said nervously. Nobody got hurt permanently, Rebecca corrected. Bruised egos do not count. I found my voice, though it came out as more of a croak. What is he? Human, Rebecca said simply, as if that explained everything. Humans are not supposed to be capable of that. I protested. Your species is physically inferior by every measurable standard. Weaker, slower, less durable. The galactic databases are very clear on this. Rebecca's smile took on a slightly predatory quality.
Oh, those measurements are accurate. On average, humans are weaker and slower than most galactic species. But you see, Ambassador Quilnax, humans have spent our entire evolutionary history being the physically inferior species on our planet.
I do not understand. We shared our world with creatures that could run faster, bite harder, and fight better than us. Creatures with fangs, claws, natural armor, venom. We had none of those things. Do you know how we survived? I shook my head, my sensory tendrils hanging limply. We became really good at finding ways to win anyway. Rebecca explained. We learned to use tools, strategy, psychology. We studied our enemies until we knew exactly where to strike for maximum effect. We practiced combat as an art form for thousands of years, and eventually we became the apex predator on a planet filled with apex predators. Tommy swallowed his snack and added helpfully, also, we are kind of crazy. That helps. Drexith had managed to sit up. His mandibles clicked weakly. That was not normal combat, mixed martial arts, military close-quarters combat training, some traditional styles thrown in, plus practical experience, Tommy said conversationally. I trained for about 20 years, which is not even that long, really. Some of my instructors were in their 70s and could still kick my butt. 70 years of training? Korvan asked, his voice filled with grudging respect. No, they were 70 years old, Tommy clarified. Humans can fight effectively well into old age if they keep training. Our bodies are efficient like that. I tried to process this information and failed. But you looked so relaxed, so unprofessional. Because I was relaxed, Tommy said with a shrug. No point getting tense until there is actual danger. Stress is bad for you, man. Causes all sorts of health problems. Rebecca stood and walked around the table surveying the damage. Now let us be clear about something. Tommy could have killed everyone in this room. He chose not to. That is the important part. Humans understand violence. We understand it very well, but we also understand restraint. She stopped in front of Drexith. Your 40 guards. Tommy could have killed them in under a minute if that was his objective. The Selvix Honor Guard. Same result. Ambassador Quilnax's soldiers. Same. Instead, he spent almost 3 minutes making sure everyone would wake up with nothing worse than bruises and hurt pride. Because despite what you all seem to think, humans actually prefer peace. Korvan lifted his massive head. Why? Why do you prefer peace if you are so effective at war? Rebecca's expression softened. Because we have fought enough wars to know what they cost. We have lost enough people to understand what we are throwing away. We have seen what happens when violence becomes the first solution instead of the last resort. She returned to her seat. So here is what happens next. We are going to negotiate a peace treaty. We are going to do it calmly, professionally, and respectfully. And if anyone decides to get violent again, Tommy will remind them why that is a bad idea. Any question? Silence. Good, Rebecca said. Let us start with territorial disputes. I have a proposal that benefits all three species. We negotiated for 6 hours straight. Nobody argued. Nobody postured. Nobody even raised their voice. Whenever someone started to get aggressive, they would glance at Tommy, who was still eating snacks and looking completely relaxed, and they would suddenly become very reasonable. The peace treaty was signed before midnight. That was 3 months ago. The treaty has held perfectly. Not a single violation. Not even a minor skirmish along the borders. Do you know why? It is not because our species suddenly developed a love for peace. It is not because we resolved our differences through understanding and compromise. It is because absolutely nobody wants to risk another human intervention. The footage from that summit, somehow it leaked. Some station technician made a copy and sold it to a news network. Within a week, every species in the galaxy had seen Tommy Chen dismantle 75 trained soldiers in under 3 minutes. The video has been analyzed by military strategists across known space. They keep trying to figure out how he did it, what techniques he used, what the secret is. The secret, I have come to understand, is that humans spent millennia learning how to kill things that were bigger, stronger, and better armed than they were. They practiced violence as an art form, not because they loved it, but because they needed to survive. And then, when they finally became the dominant species on their planet, when they no longer needed to fight for survival, they did something remarkable. They chose peace anyway. They still trained for war. Oh yes, humans maintain extensive martial traditions, but they started using that capacity for violence as a deterrent rather than a first option. The Kathan Dominion now has a human military advisor. The Selvix Empire requested human combat trainers. My own government has opened diplomatic channels to establish closer ties with humanity. We are all, every single one of us, absolutely terrified of what might happen if we gave humans an actual reason to go to war. I spoke with Rebecca last week. I asked her if she ever regretted bringing Tommy to the summit, if she thought it sent the wrong message about humanity. She laughed and said, "Quillnax, bringing Tommy sent exactly the message we wanted to send. Humans can be peaceful. Humans want to be peaceful. But humans are also very, very good at not being peaceful when necessary." So the bodyguard was a threat? I asked. The bodyguard was a promise, she corrected. A promise that peace is always the better option. I think about that conversation often, usually late at night when I cannot sleep. The humans brought a bodyguard to peace negotiations. The war ended in 3 minutes, and somehow, improbably, impossibly, we have been at peace ever since. Turns out, sometimes the best way to achieve peace is to make absolutely certain that everyone understands the alternative.